You know, this opposition motion and, quite frankly, the entire Conservative plan around the auto industry in Canada comes down to one thing. It comes down to denialism. And I'm going to demonstrate by talking in particular about three things that they're denying the reality of. They're denying the reality of the auto sector and what exists today. They're denying the reality of the trade situation that we have with the United States, and they're denying the reality of the emerging EV market. And so I start with the auto sector, Mr. Speaker. The reality is that the auto sector that the Conservatives are trying to hearken back to is one from the 1960s. An auto industry and a sector in North America that was completely different. For example, back in the 1960s, there were primarily just three auto manufacturers in North America: Ford, Chrysler, and I believe GM. Now, there are literally dozens. This is one of the key reasons why it doesn't work. The other thing, the major difference between the 1960s and now, I can't believe I have to explain this to Conservatives, but when we consider the fact that they live in the past, it makes sense, is the reality that supply chains are different now than they were back then. Yep. What they're talking about is such a fundamental shift to the reality of the sector that we have right now as it relates to auto. And don't take my word for it, because I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to the auto industry, Mr. Speaker. So let's listen to what some of the experts are saying. So John Dagnolo said, and I quote, referring to the Leader of the Opposition, he said, he looked at a pack from 1965 and he tried to put details in there. Today, the industry is totally different. So they put out these numbers, and unfortunately, they didn't do the homework.
No surprise there.
So that's from the Unifor Local 200 President and Auto Council Chair. Now, the member from Dufferin-Caledon and a number of Conservatives have got up and said, well, you're just cherry picking. That's just what one person said. You're taking one quote. Well, then I won't stop there, and I'll go further, Mr. Speaker. This is coming from Alana Payne, the Uniform National President, who said, when talking about the Leader of the Opposition, she said, this is what she said: I know they would love to drown out her words, but I would like to repeat them in this House. She said, I have concerns and questions with some of what your party presented. We are encouraged by your effort. Good news, guys, you get an A for effort, but skeptical that this plan can restart idled Canadian facilities. In fact, we fear it may prevent potential future growth. Wow. Again, from the Unifor National President. But I won't stop there, because I know they want more, Mr. Speaker. Here's Tom Venitas, an industry expert, who says, quote, I think some of these ideas are sort of reviving an aspect of the old 1965 Canada-US Auto Pact. They don't seem very well thought out. It's an argument that I don't think he understands will not work. An auto expert, Mr. Speaker, is saying that the Leader of the Opposition, in his words, doesn't understand that it will not work. But that doesn't surprise anybody except Conservatives who are living in the 1960s, quite literally, as it relates to this motion. But the other issue about the auto sector from today versus the 1960s, which leads to my second reality of denial from the Conservatives, is the trade relationship that exists with the United States. Look, I don't know if they haven't been paying attention or they've had their heads in the sand for the last year, but I would like to explain in as clear terms as I possibly can to my friends across the way about the reality of what's going on in the United States, okay? The United States right now, it's an economic term, so I want them to really focus on this, are relying on something called protectionism. This happens periodically throughout history as different countries look to internalize and resist and shut off all trade coming and going from their country. The United States of America is currently in a period where they are employing and putting forward and bringing in protectionist policies. These policies are meant to prevent trade. They're meant to bring jobs back home. Now, economists around the world will argue it's a horrible policy. I completely agree with it. Our party agrees with it. But the fundamental fact here, Mr. Speaker, is the Conservatives are denying the fact that that exists. They are just saying, hey guys, here's our plan. We got this great plan for how we're going to kickstart. But you know what that plan relies on? That plan relies on the Americans actually wanting international trade. Now, I think I clearly laid out that they don't, and that's the reality. So their plan is genuinely a non-starter.
That's right.
This is why we decided, okay, since we're a country that still believes in trade, we will go find partners that also want to participate in trade, rather than denying the fact that this is the world that we live in. Nostalgia is great, and let's be nostalgic, okay? I remember what my life was back in the 90s. I just recently shared a post about it. That doesn't mean that I think that I'm still that person today, because things change, and nostalgia is not a strategy, even though the Conservatives tend to think that it is. But, you know, something that I found really interesting was something that the Conservative member from Oshawa said earlier. She said, and I quote, she said, "Oh, I've been listening the whole day." She said, "You have to know what the person you're negotiating with wants." They literally don't understand what Donald Trump wants. He doesn't want trade. That's why he has tariffs. Tariffs are meant to prevent trade. And by the way, it's not just with Canada. It's with just about every developed and developing nation throughout the world. The U.S. administration has put tariffs on trade. So why are the Conservatives just hell-bent on trying to insist on something that's just never going to happen? Let me bring us to my third and final point about denialism with respect to the Conservatives. They deny the fact, and I've given this speech so many times in this House, they deny the fact that our entire auto industry is on a way to being completely electrified. Now, Mr. Speaker, one in four cars in the world right now that is sold is an electric vehicle. 1 in 4 cars is an electric vehicle. Now, if the Conservatives want to think that somehow North America, and in particular just 2 countries, are going to form a coalition that hives themselves off from the rest of the world, it is absolutely ludicrous. We are electrifying. You know, the member from Dufferin-Caledon who talks about this, he should go and look at what is called the innovation curve. And he will see along the innovation curve that once you get to 1 out of 4, which is 25% of your penetration of a new technology into a market, you are going to eventually get to the point where that technology fully and completely makes its way into the market. Now, Conservatives can use this idea of nostalgia to dictate everything that they do, but I would caution them that maybe it's time for self-reflection. Maybe they should think about why it is that they are where they are, and I mean that both metaphorically and physically speaking in this House of Commons. It's because they don't have foresight. It's because they insist on using all political tactics in terms of rage baiting and looking for opportunity, rather than really dedicating themselves to finding solutions that will benefit our country well into the future. And that's what our Prime Minister is doing, Mr. Speaker. He is looking for the solutions that will benefit Canada, not just in the next month or 2 months or 3 months, but into the future, so that when we look back at this in generations from now, when our markets have diversified, we can look back and say, you know what? At that particular moment in time, we did the right thing. But more importantly, Canadians did the right thing, and that was not listening to Conservatives.